Can you believe this is Tokyo in 1997? In the 90s and early 2000s, Tokyo had the coolest street style in the world. Not on the runway, not on red carpets, just on the street. So today we're going to talk about what made this moment so explosive, some of the best looks, and how it ended. This is the story of Tokyo street style's golden era, so let's get into it. To understand where this fashion came from, first we have to understand the climate at the time. In the 80s, Japan was experiencing explosive economic growth. Think Panasonic and Sony and Toyota and salaryman, all of it. At one point, the land beneath the Imperial Palace in Tokyo was valued higher than the entire state of California, which is obviously insane, but just goes to show you how much of an economic bubble they were in. Sometime around 1990, the bubble burst, which then brought unemployment and slow cultural shift. And this is where fashion comes in. Harajuku is a district of Shibuya. At this time, its main street had a bunch of boutiques and luxury fashion stores, and the back streets were full of thrift shops and small designer stores. The back streets of Harajuku was called Uraharajuku, or for short, Urahara. And these streets were filled with young people who just really wanted to express themselves through fashion in this time of limited economic prospects. And these kids made a really unique fashion identity through local streetwear brands, thrifting clothes, hand-making things, and expressing themselves through what they would wear. You started to see subcultures emerge, like decora, which was characterized by its pastels and loud colors and plastic accessories. Lolita was like this Victorian-inspired frilly kind of dresses and stuff. And you have goths, you have gyaru, you have punks, you have visual kei, as well as American-influenced streetwear, all in these kind of back streets of Harajuku. So Harajuku really became the center of like this global fashion movement, and the trends that were coming out of there, the fashion that was coming out of there, did influence the rest of Japan, but also eventually would influence the rest of the world. Despite all of this though, Harajuku did retain its intimacy. It was a small neighborhood, and at the time it was really considered to be this burst of intense creative energy. But in essence, it was a reflection of change and a reaction to the times. And as we see it now, looking back, it's also cultural storytelling. Obviously, all of this is taking place before social media existed. So a lot of this is being defined and documented by a handful of magazines. These magazines kind of acted as cultural archives, and to people from outside of Tokyo, they were acting as a guide to Tokyo as well. The biggest and most well-known magazine out of these is Fruits. I'm sure you've probably seen some of these pictures before. Fruits was launched in 1997 by Shoichi Aoki, and Fruits eventually really became synonymous with Harajuku street fashion. Although you will see in there some of the kids are wearing high fashion brands, it was by no means like high fashion advertisement or high fashion styling. It was really celebrating individuality and expression. A lot of these looks in here, they have bold layering and pattern mixing, and mixing high fashion items with thrifted items and a lot of handmade pieces. And the reason we know this is because it's so cool that every photo has a little bio about everything that the person's wearing, and then it also asks them what their hair salon is, what their current obsession is, what their favorite music is. And a lot of the people in there look super cool, but then you find out that they're just like 14 years old or something, which is absolutely a spin out. What this ended up doing is really creating intimacy with the reader and also capturing the spirit of Harajuku. It was eclectic, it was rebellious, it was experimental, and it was also full of subculture. You can just imagine fashion kids would have just been dying to be featured in Fruits, like that would have been your ticket to being the coolest, you know. Another magazine that was parallel to Fruits was CUTiE. So CUTiE was launched in 1989 to act as like an alternative to the more traditional women's fashion magazines. And as a magazine, it really celebrated accessibility, affordability, and in particular DIY. It had a lot of how to make this shirt or how to alter your jacket. It featured a lot of thrifted outfits and handmade accessories and oversized sweaters, platform sneakers, and it cultivated this community of young women at the time through being empowering to them and encouraging them to experiment with style and express themselves. KERA was another magazine that was very fashion oriented, but also like tying fashion in with music and subculture. You can see this glam rock influence with dramatic makeup and goths and punks and stuff. They also featured this very Fruits-esque street style photography, but in essence it was an alternative magazine and really captured this alternative subculture subculture-based spirit. This is just an example of 3 of the magazines, but there was tons of them. Print media was very much alive in Japan at the time, and actually kind of still is comparatively to the West. But yeah, these were vital platforms for not only documenting trends, but shaping them, and would have been absolutely essential in a pre-social media world. This cultural moment that we are so lucky now that it was documented. So you can see from these examples that this fashion style really organically emerged from the streets, from kids who wanted to express themselves and kids who wanted to do something different. And given that a lot of these kids are teenagers, I'm guessing that a lot of this stuff must have been very cost effective. They've gone thrifting, they've gotten stuff for cheap, they've layered it in unexpected ways, and it just looks incredible. To be honest with you, I've actually got an archive of the first 50 issues of Fruits, and I went through every single look, of which there was so many, like thousands and thousands of looks, to try to narrow down to just a couple that we can talk about in the video, but it's just too hard to choose. So I just picked a couple at random, and so let's get into them. So this one is super cool. I think the look really goes with her hair. She's definitely got a lot of attitude. She says that her shirt cost 1,300 yen from a flea market, which if you don't know, that's like, I don't know, 10 bucks or something. Pants are a brand called Binary. Her shoes are Buffalo. Her rings were gifted to her. Her hair salon, if anyone's interested, is Ueda-san. Her current obsession is washing her hair, and her favorite music is drum and bass. She's 18 years old and her name is Yuri, and she sounds cool as hell. I think this one's a really good example of someone in Fruits wearing designer clothes. She says her name is Mayu and she's 30 years old, which the magazine is implying is a lie. Her coat is helmet laying, her shirt is undercover, her skirt is undercover, her bag is LV, her hairband is also undercover, her fashion point is random, and her current obsession is making rabbits. I mean, I don't really know what that means. Favorite music is club jazz, and she looks super cool. I don't think anyone would let me get out of this section of explaining the looks without doing one of these decoro ones. So the one on the left, her sweater is a brand called Betty's Blue. Her skirt is homemade. Her pants are from a flea market, and she says, I love flea markets. Her shoes are a brand called ABAB. Her bag is a brand called Garabu, but she says she hates it. Her accessories are a brand called Bunkaya, a brand called Lovers, and Handmade. Fashion point is a date with Rina-chan, who I believe is her friend next to her. Under hair salon, she says, Mariko Mama did it for me. So I'm guessing that's a friend of hers' mum or something like that. Her favorite music is TMR, which I don't know what that is. And her name is Sachi, and she's only 14 years old. That's insane. And I thought this girl looked really cool too. Her name is Natsuko. She's 16 years old. Her shirt is Panama Boy. Her skirt is Panama Boy. Her pants, she says, are from a department store somewhere. Her shoes are Diesel. Her bag, she forgot. Accessories, Mugendo. Fashion point is tropical. Beauty salon, she says she does her hair herself. Current obsession is raising crayfish, and favorite music is violent music. And she also just adds at the end that she's looking for band members. So hopefully she's found some by now. I mean, I could go with this section all day, but we should probably move on. But just a special shout out to these 2 girls that are wearing all Comme des Garçons and Vivienne Westwood. And also shout out to this girl wearing Jean Paul Gaultier. They look incredible. Anyway, moving on. So trends in Harajuku would move rapidly. You know, they would start with just a couple of innovative people. Those trends would be documented and spread. And then once everyone's wearing it, those original people would move on to the next thing. Very similar to what we see these days. But I feel like the overarching theme was always about this pursuit of individuality. Secondhand and thrifted clothing was obviously very cool, as well as supporting local brands. Like, we didn't get a chance to go through just then, but when I was going through looks, there's like a ton of local brands, and it's actually a really great database for me to find out about brands of that era, as well as, for example, that girl is wearing Undercover, which Jun Takahashi now we see as this very highly revered designer, but at the time I'm guessing was probably more like just a local guy. The issues of Fruits that I have are ranging from 1997 through to 2001, and you can see that very colorful decora thing getting a lot more popular towards 1999, 2000, and it's not seen as much in 1997, 1998 issues. So I think these magazines were documenting trends when they already existed, and they weren't so much deciding the trends as documenting the trends, and they were probably deciding the trends for the people outside of Tokyo, whereas the people who were inside of Tokyo were organically creating trends through physical spaces, personal connections, and other grassroots channels. There's a department store called La Foret Department Store in Harajuku where all the kids would hang out at, and I'm sure they would all know each other. It was full of like small boutiques and independent designers, and from all accounts was quite a crucial meeting place for these fashion kids in Harajuku. Harajuku. But it's interesting how we can really see a lot about what these people are like through their outfits, you know. Their outfits are really showing us a lot about them, a lot about their interests, a lot about their personality, which I guess is the amazing thing about subculture and something that's not as prevalent these days. But it definitely feels like they weren't as into acquisition, as in like it's not so much about what you bought, it's a lot more about how you wear something, how you style something. But despite how incredibly vibrant all of this is, it did eventually reach a turning point. By the kind of early 2000s, there was a lot of changes happening that started to affect Harajuku and then in turn affect the fashion. The biggest thing was the closure of Hokoten, which was the pedestrian-only zone in Harajuku. And that's where a lot of the photos that we've been showing here were taken. It was like an area of the suburb where cars weren't allowed to drive and people would just be all over the streets, and it was like a shopping area and kids could go there to show their outfits and be photographed by fruits. It was really vital for the kids to gather and exchange ideas and be influenced through fashion. And then once it got shut down, people who were there said they actively saw their creativity start to fade. It also in the 2000s became increasingly more and more of a tourist destination, which really diluted the authenticity and ruined everything. Not to mention the whole Gwen Stefani thing. I don't know if you guys remember, let's not even talk about it, it sucks. But what I'm trying to say is eventually the neighborhood became a caricature of itself. It became so oversaturated and so touristy that no one wanted to hang out there anymore. On top of this, in the early 2000s was the rise of fast fashion, you know, Uniqlo, H&M, Forever 21. I mean, Uniqlo's great, but still, this kind of mass production made being an individual a lot less of an appealing option for the kids, and DIY started to die. Moving further and further down the line, of course, in the 2010s, we have the rise of social media, which reshaped how trends would spread and how people would express themselves. Once social media came, it was like self-expression didn't require a physical presence in a physical space. And from here, Harajuku's tribes started to go online. And then photographers like Shoichi Aoki from Fruits couldn't find anyone to photograph. He did famously say in 2017 when Fruits shut down that there are no more cool kids left to photograph. But from what I understand, he didn't mean that creativity had vanished. He just meant that the culture and the conditions that were needed to create that kind of street style had changed. Trends that emerged organically were now premeditated for online, and subculture is now kind of content, which is not a bad thing. It's just change. Things just change, you know. But the closure of Fruits was the end of an era, and it really signaled this shift from fashion as something that was community driven to something that's a lot more global. But of course, Tokyo is still amazing for street style. There's tons of cool people there still, but it has evolved beyond this era. Despite all of this kind of golden era of late 90s, early 2000s Tokyo street style is still so influential. We see its influence in both mainstream and designer fashion. CDG, Junya Watanabe, Sakai, or even brands from other countries like Miu Miu. We see a lot of this layering and complexity that feels like it's referencing Fruits, you know. Not to mention kids on TikTok recreating these outfits, which I think can sometimes be quite cool, you know. This Harajuku style is remixed through a contemporary lens. And it kind of shows that to all of us, there is like a nostalgia for this, but also an ongoing fascination with it. We're also seeing people archiving these magazines and making accounts where they're posting all the best looks of them. And I feel like this romanticization of this era and almost like revival of this era shows that we as a society are really looking for expression and individuality again. Because yeah, Tokyo street style didn't die, it just stopped being local. For me personally, I remember the first time I saw Fruits. For some reason, they had it in my high school library. And I remember looking through the pages as a kid and just being like, whoa, these looks are just incredible. Still to this day, and I'm in my 30s, I feel like it really represents fashion at its most authentic and at its most free. And I'm still really passionate about exploring the archives. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I had an incredible time making this video. Like, this was so much fun. If no one watches it, that's fine with me. When I think about myself or think about the current landscape, I feel like it's hard to tell who we're dressing for. Are we dressing for ourselves? Are we dressing for an online audience? Or are we dressing for something else? Anyway, follow me on Instagram, it's here. And also like and subscribe. Bye.